And for all of you who have joined in today for the webinar, you're entitled to a 10% discount for our next masterclass that is going to happen on the 30th of July. That is called The Beginner's Guide to Cryptocurrencies. And so it's on Thursday, 30th of July from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. And you can register by following the link. And I will add the link also on the comment section. So briefly about iTrain, who is organizing today's webinar. So we are supporting digital transformation in Asia, and we are pioneers and leaders in tech learning. And at iTrain, we believe in two core principles: the power of technology to shape the future and help us build a better world, and that love of learning is the source of human ingenuity and well-being. And our goal, which is backed by government and academia, is to fast-track Asian businesses with the latest technology applications and know-how. So currently we are rolling out courses in mobile development, blockchain, data science, Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, fintech, digital marketing, and cybersecurity. And about all these courses, you can find out more on our website, www.itrend.com.mi. And there you will also find that some of the courses are currently rolled out online. And you can also join for the master classes that are less than, our usual courses are 5 days. So the master classes would be a half-day session where you learn the hands-on experience and skills that you can use in your businesses or build your startups by learning how to code and how to build a blockchain. And as you can see, we have had the opportunity to empower businesses across many strategic sectors such as finance, technology, industry, and manufacturing. And yes, so that is it from me. And once again, if you have any questions during the webinar for Harpreet, you can write them in the comments section and the questions will be answered after the webinar. So thank you for your attention, and I will give the floor to Harpreet.
Thank you, Elizabeth. So
Yes.
First of all, thank you everybody for joining in the webinar today. So we'll be discussing on what are the opportunities and challenges that are dropping into blockchain sector. But before I begin, let me introduce myself. So my name is Harpreet Singh Maan. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Blockline, which is a blockchain development company based out of Cyberjaya. And I'm also the CTO of Verifizer. I hold various other positions to advocate for blockchain adoption in Malaysia, some in the ISO committee, MDEC, and many others. And I also advise multiple companies on blockchain strategies and adoption strategies, and also governments as well. In short, I'll just say that I'm more of a techie, like really deep into blockchain technology for the past few years, and then later on noticed that I can bring more value being an entrepreneur. So, before I begin, because today is going to be quite a long topic, so I thought of like maybe going quickly into the slides and explaining what exactly is blockchain. Usually, I leave this for my master classes or for my full day classes to explain what is blockchain. But for the benefit of all the people who's joining in the webinar today, I felt that maybe we should talk about blockchain and what it is briefly, because a lot of times when you're talking about blockchain outside, actually people do not understand how the technology behaves and how the technology works and what are the problems it's solving. So they do not know, or they could not value what they're going to learn in a blockchain masterclass or in a cryptocurrency masterclass. So that's the reason I thought that maybe today, since we are doing this webinar, it's actually much more beneficial to actually talk a bit about blockchain first, and then moving into what are the opportunities and challenges which are coming up in this ecosystem. So I think without wasting much time, let's get into it. So first of all, what exactly is blockchain? If you've been, like hearing about blockchain, it became a buzzword for the past 2 years, where a lot of people are talking about the technology, and the technology is going to revolutionize the whole world, is going to change this, is going to change that. But often, actually, if you really sit down and ask somebody, like who's even in the technology space, even a software engineer, what exactly is a blockchain, either he will say that he do not understand, or he do not know, Or there's a possibility he will give you a definition of blockchain that he read it online that might not be the most accurate definition, because one of the problems in the space is definitions are still being defined. It's a very relatively quite new industry, although Bitcoin has been around for 11 years. But the whole blockchain as an industry really started to formalize in the last 4 to 5 years, where you start to see a lot new development that actually kind of speed up a lot of the development in the space. And most importantly, why actually it exists. Every technology is there to solve a problem, in like a problem that we face, or a problem like that we require solutions like this. So that's the reason I think that before I get into blockchain, I actually would like to see why does blockchain even exist. So, in the aftermath of the 2008 financial crisis, a lot of people kind of really started to mistrust of the existing financial systems, the government, the banks. So, this is nothing to do with the technology, it's just a backstory. So, if you look into understanding in a movie why a character behaves in a certain way, or why you need to know what is the backstory of the character. And in this case, you actually can better understand why is he taking such judgments, or why is he behaving in certain way in that particular movie plot, right? Similarly here, you actually have to understand the backstory about blockchain to understand why was it designed that way, and what are the problems it was designed to solve, and how can we take the concepts, the ideas of blockchain, the technology itself, and mold it into solving other problems that we face on our day-to-day lives. So in the aftermath of 2008 financial crisis, there was a lot of mistrust in the financial system. A lot of where they saw that a lot of the financial players basically played around with a lot of the value system, a lot of money, and later just got away without really any of the consequences. So in this case, people tend to they a lot of people tend to ideate how can they actually improve uh, like the whole financial system. Some decided to digitize and started to do financial technologies like fintech. And you can see after that a lot of fintechs ideas and payment concepts and digital banks started to come up, where they had a better governance structure, they had more control, more visibility, more digital approach was taken in some banks. And there was also a community or society where they were looking into like doing financial, or having an alternative financial system where they basically do not rely on the financial system that exists. They wanted an alternate option to basically to do a lot of their day-to-day business and trading. So people started to go and explore. There was actually some ideas and some exploration before 2008 as well, early 2005, 2006, 2007. There's a number of papers that was released. People were talking about peer-to-peer currencies, peer-to-peer money, internet money. And but it never really picked off because they never had a technology backbone that actually can allow like decentralized currencies, where you, instead of just relying on one server running all the financial like calculations and keeping everybody's accounts, you rely on multiple servers in the network, and have trust, and also at the same time have the resilience that nobody can cheat or hack that network. There was no technology that was available back then. And at the same time, there was no technology that was available to identify if somebody is tampering with your data, right? So imagine if you keep an information, like in a server, if anybody comes in and edit it, and you have no record of it. So let's say if I can go in into a bank account and just change my account number and add additional zeros in my bank account, and I can become a millionaire overnight. So there's basically not stopping anybody, right? In this case, everybody will start becoming millionaire the next day. There's no credibility to such financial system. But today, even today and even back then in 2008, a lot of financial systems that exist, they were mainly just databases. They were maintained by few authorities, and in this case, they usually keep the logs and the backups of it. But let's say if there was a rogue DBA, or like anybody at the back want to change any databases, they can do it. And there was no transparency. That was one of the reasons where the subprime mortgages actually failed, because a lot of the facts and figures of the actual assets was not clear to the investors. So the subprime mortgages was performing bad, but since they were repackaged and sold in a different asset and repackaged again and sold in a different asset, the investors of the assets thought that the market is booming. But actually, no, people were suffering and they could not pay their mortgages, which later on, when the bubble burst, everybody lost money because there was not enough transparency in the ecosystem. So you notice there was like too centrally controlled, no transparency, and there were a need for an alternative ecosystem for where people can rely on, instead of putting on their money on the main ecosystem or the main financial system, people wanted an alternative financial system. So there was a newcomer into the space who came, Satoshi Nakamoto, an anonymous person, who came up on Reddit, and he started to post a lot of his uh, Bitcoin white paper and started to discuss about the idea of having a cryptocurrency where it is a peer-to-peer payment network instead of and it can actually disintermediate banks and actually do payment and have a value system between the people. That's why the idea of Bitcoin started to become very appealing when it was right after the financial crisis, where people already had a lot of mistrust on the government. They had a lot of mistrust on the financial system and the way it operated, because they felt that, okay, if I'm going to keep my money there, and it's not, and I can't preserve my value, and all of my hard work, hard earned money can just be wiped off in a night. A lot of people felt a lot of insecurity was there. So people felt that maybe they want to test on an alternative system. That when Bitcoin idea was introduced back in January 2009, it was very appealing to a big segment of audience that they maybe would want to test out an alternative system. But one of the main changes here, why the peer-to-peer currencies before it doesn't work, because Bitcoin actually introduced a new form of technology. But before I go into that, I actually would like to share a bit of my personal story of exploring and identifying Bitcoin as well. So I was actually looking into Bitcoin, never bought it, was just exploring it back in 2012 when the price was about $15 to $16. It was actually booming. It went to like about from $12 to $83 by the time I was just observing it. And I'm like, wow, this is crazy. This market space is either is a bubble or is a scam. And I was just like, I was very skeptical about this whole ecosystem back then because it was a bit too early, and I was and I was actually observing it, and I felt that maybe I just don't get it why people was investing so much of money into cryptocurrencies or Bitcoin back then. So I, after just looking into it, I say like, wait, why do actually most of the money and most of the currencies in the world have value? I decided to ask that question. So I went back and started to do research on why, like Malaysian ringgit has value, or why dollar have value, or why the most expensive currencies in the world, like if we talk about Kuwaiti dinars, or we talk about Omani rials, why do they have value and why are they highly priced? Why are they priced that way? So I actually started to study a bit of the economics, study a bit of the way you do issuance, the way you maintain the money, and suddenly Bitcoin's economics started to make sense to me on how uh, Bitcoin as a financial system could work. But where I really saw the gold mine was, it was in the technology. But before we get into the technology, I think I would just like to conclude on Bitcoin. It's a people's digital cryptocurrency, uncensorable and unbiased. So in this case, they worried that Bitcoin will meet the same fate as a lot of the earlier P2P currencies where they can be tracked and shut down. So they decided to be a more uncensorable, unbiased, anonymous, pseudonymous kind of cryptocurrency ecosystem where people can track who are the people behind it, so that nobody can be caught or penalized for using it. And a system of decentralized trust, instead of focusing on a central point or thinking that Satoshi Nakamoto will be managing it. He just said, no, I'm not going to manage it. The community going to manage it, and I'm just going to set a game rules for people to actually follow and basically flow in the ecosystem, and let people to choose how would they want to govern the whole ecosystem. So coming back to technology, I felt that this was the actual gold mine that we were sitting on, and we just didn't identify. Because back in 2012, I was also studying other technologies. I was actually still in uni. I was still studying how AI is going to change the world, how big data is coming around, there was few problems that I felt that in the next 5 to 6 years we will encounter, which is will be one is trust. When we talk about AI, if we let's say we let AI to we make more and more modern AIs where AIs are able to take better decisions, and then there's more and more data on a person is being gathered. But what about privacy then, right? And then when we talk about financial systems that are being quite obsolete and the technologies are quite outdated, I don't see the next 5 to 10 years when we have self-driving cars taking my ATM card, walking to the car, poking it in, putting in my PIN numbers, getting an approval, and getting in the car, or carrying my cash and trying to put it like a vending machine in my driverless car, or something like that, right? I didn't. I whenever let's say we have a self-driving taxi service in the future, I every time when I look into futuristic movies, we always saw that payment was very simple. You had your ID, you would just walk around, you tab on something or you just approved it from your device and the payment is done and millions are just being transferred and the economy works in that way. So I was just like sitting down in one day and imagining how the future of money is going to look like, how the future economy going to look like, and how the technologies will behave in the space. And AI became an interesting part of the interesting part of the equation, an interesting part of the future. But I just couldn't trust AI, and I just couldn't trust a lot of these technologies that are going to be running up there. And that where I felt that blockchain can play a very important role of becoming the trust technology, where you have a technology that can self uh, self manage its security, self manage its auditing, self manage its compliance, and at the same be a kind of a decentralized kind of trust where no central party will be controlling it. In this case, you can have a more shared ecosystem where you can just walk in, you have your payment system on it, you have your data on it, you have your identity systems on it, and you can control that. And you have rights in that ecosystem because the game rules are set that way. So it started to make a lot of sense to me. But before I jump ahead into future, I think let's talk about what exactly is blockchain technology. So blockchain technology is one of the earliest successful implementation of a decentralized ledger technology, DLT. So it's actually the keywords are already in the name. It's distributed, so they're stored more than one location. It's a ledger. It's just like your Buku Lima Lima, and it's a technology of the Buku Lima Lima, which is stored across various people. And distributed ledger database is spread across several nodes, which is in the next sentence explaining it, on a peer-to-peer network, people to people, to make it simpler, where each replicates depends, which where each replicates and saves an identical copy of the ledger and updates itself independently. So just like what I was talking in the story earlier, it's a technology that like self-govern, self-replicate, and it just obeys a game rule that has been set up by the developers. And in this case, it checks itself, is it in compliance with that rules? Where in AI, how do we actually decide if it's compliant, or is it do behaving in such a way? Because AI has its belief systems and stuff that they actually can modify. But let's stick to blockchain for now. And moving in before we can go in and understand what is distributed systems, because since we're talking about a distributed ledger technology, a system that is distributed, where it's kept in several nodes, we have to understand a bit on computer systems before we get into a distributed system. If not, it will just you would just not get what the idea of this technology. So there are a few types of computer systems that exist. You have the centralized systems, which where you have your central computer and you have nodes that are connected to it. For an example, this is like a study group where or maybe a teamwork group where you actually have a leader, where the leader actually gets the information from the teacher on what are the assignments and what are things have to be done, and everybody else get the information from him that what are the things have to be done, and what are the deliverables and what are the tasks that each individual have to be divided among them. In this case, this one person becomes the person who holds most of the information, and at the same time it actually kind of moderates and at the same time manages all the other nodes that are actually connected to it. So in this case, if you look into a lot of our university system, let's say whenever we want to request data, we call the server gives us a website, and we know what are the courses being offered by the university. And let's say I want to register it for my next semester, I can choose and register it, and just and basically get my timetable of the class. So this is how system centralized system work. Mainly, you have one leader who actually manages the network. But in a decentralized system, you have multiple leaders that are actually talking to each other. So imagine the same classroom, but all the leaders, there's a whole classroom wide assignment, and all the leaders have to talk to each other to to kind of complete the goal. Let's say there's a fun fair coming around, or in Malaysia we have a Hari Canteen, where you actually can basically have to organize an activity. So let's say if a class had to organize an activity, and there will be a leader with a sub team of decoration, as a leader with a sub team of finance, as a leader and a sub team of marketing. In this case, you have all the leaders coordinating with each other and deciding what are the data they want to share, what are the new information, what are the new updates. So coming back in digital example from of the analogy, imagine your Facebook, right? So you have Facebook server in Malaysia, you have Facebook server in Singapore, you have Facebook server in South Korea. And let's say if you move from Malaysia to Singapore and Singapore to South Korea, your data is stored here in Malaysia. So when you go here and log in, they have to fetch that information that where your host country is, and give the information and copy the latest feeds to Singapore. And let's say from there you take a flight and you go to South Korea, it will actually have to fetch the host information from Malaysia and get the latest feeds and what are the new information they should be showing you. So in this case, they all can coordinate with each other. But in a small group like this, all of it is relying on this one member and this one server over here, and everybody else is just taking the information from it. And it is not like a decentralized system where you can have multiple servers dividing the task. Here, there's only one leader, and let's say the task is overwhelming. Often, like in my case, the leader will just go missing, or the leader will get overloaded and he would not really show up to classes or something like that. And then basically everybody else can't operate as well. So this is one of the reason why whenever there's a peak time, you can see the bank systems doesn't work, or university systems doesn't work often, or some of the government service systems doesn't work whenever they speak, like LHD. And recently it didn't really work out because of too many people asking for requests. But this distributed system is a bit different. It knows all the peers that are joining in, what are their capabilities. And let's say, imagine this in an analogy, that this is a football game, or let's say it's a futsal game, right? There's a 10 aside, 5 aside game, and there's 10 people uh, on the ground, and they're playing futsal at the moment. And often when you play futsal with your friends, we don't have a referee. We don't have a person counting for the scores. Everybody take care of the scores. Everybody govern the game. Let's say if the ball is out, everybody kind of decide, is it out or not out, or if it was it as considered a score or not score. What was the total score? Because there was a common set of game rules that has been understood by everybody. And every time when there's a majority saying that the total score was 2, we take the answer of the majority. In this case, we don't have to rely on a captain or a mean leader to govern and tell us what is the truth of the network. Everybody can just operate in a set of rules. And whenever somebody new join in, let's say a new person want to learn how to play futsal, somebody who already know it will just teach him how to play futsal and what are the rules, and he can quickly start learning it. He don't have to go to a futsal sifu and sit down learning it. He can just learn it from one of the peers, and he can get started in the game. Let's say you want to be a champion, then of course you have to go to a futsal guru. But let's say he wants to just learn the game, he just want to be a futsal player, it's very easy. You just learn from one of the peers that exists. Imagine the same things in computer, where computers just have a set of rules and they behave in that network similarly. In this case, let's say if it's a file sharing system like uTorrent, in this case, they know, if let's say if somebody is requesting for a file, what should I do? If I have this file, what should I do? How should I share it? And in this case, they already know the rules of those file sharing systems, and they can keep on the network keep on expanding, and the more it expands, the faster it gets. That's the reason government could not shut down file sharing systems like uTorrent and things like that, because they didn't have a central server running it. They just had a protocol which everybody is downloading it and running it, and they had to start shut down millions of computers and find them and locate them and shut them down to basically shut down uTorrent. And if they shut down a domain, there's always a second alternative or a third alternative of a uTorrent website, right? So in this case, that's not. It's very difficult to shut down such a system that actually behaves in just a set of rules, and it's one of the most fastest scaling kind of systems as well. It's easy to scale because there's no requirement of an individual person to go in and convince others to use it. Once they download the protocol and they want to use the system, they're already a member and they're already another server running in the system, and they don't have to do heavy work. It's quite low load. So in this case, your computer don't have to be a server to use uTorrent. You just have to be one computer with internet. That's it, and you're already part of the whole network. So this was a very appealing system, because if you imagine in future where we are talking about millions and millions of devices connecting with 5G and faster internet, IoT devices coming in, we have wearable technologies coming in. Centralized and decentralized systems are already reaching a lot of its bottleneck, where they would not be able to provide a fast, efficient enough infrastructure to basically do governance, to do data sharing, to do technology, like kind of exchange. When it comes to distributed system, it's now started to become more appealing, because now it is very low bandwidth requirement. Everybody has are playing according to certain rules. Then there's no need to keep on pinging a server hundreds of kilometers away to get an update. You can just get an update between the peers nearest to you, and in this case the whole ecosystem can be much faster. But distributed system as its whole branch is quite huge. There's distributed computing, storage, and many different forms of other technologies that are emerging right now. But let's just talk about the DLT for today. I don't want to overload you with too much of other information. And we'll touch more on the other aspects in our masterclass. Uh, so DLT, blockchain technology, it actually have many different ways of implementation. That's the reason in my definition earlier I said that blockchain technology, although it's the most famous and in a way the most hype, but there's many other ways of implementing a distributed ledger or a ledger database. Blockchain technology is one of the ways. So we'll be touching more in detail and more in we'll break down every single aspect of blockchain technology in our masterclass, and especially in our developers masterclass we'll also show you how to develop those individual components to make a fully functioning blockchain technology. But in our cryptocurrency masterclass we will also break down into how it actually works, so in the future whenever you see a blockchain projects, you know how to actually judge them and identify where do they fall in this kind of a chart. Because if you look into a lot of the crypto and blockchain projects out there, there are some of them that actually are cloud systems, they're file systems, they're computing systems, they're a DAG, they're and often when we talk about those projects, people just get confused. They're like, hey, what is this now? Is this blockchain? They think everything is starting from here and branching down, but actually no. There are many technologies that are already available, and they are got nothing to do with the blockchain technology. Maybe blockchain technology is just powering their cryptocurrency, but what they actually are a file system, let's say. So in this case, that's where their business model works, on the file system. Blockchain technology might just be its crypto part, and it becomes very confusing for a lot of people to understand this because they do not know the fundamentals and the basics of the whole ecosystem and how the technologies are different from each other. And that was something which we will touch in our masterclass as well. So in short, if from the whole story that I explained, it's digitization of trust, right? So we didn't have technologies, or how how can we kind of digitize our trust? We didn't have a lot of technologies that actually could do that. Although one of the ones would be cybersecurity. Everybody thinks that cybersecurity is one of the one who enables digital trust. Yes, but uh, you definitely need to trust some systems. You need reliability towards it. You need consistency from it, and need to know that the system will always play in the common set of governance rules. Cannot go exceeding it, right? That's what are some of the uh, concepts or ideas in technology that were required to build trust in those systems. If let's say tomorrow your system it can easily be hacked or can easily be changed, or some one or two parties can decide what will be its future, it is very difficult to trust it and continuously using it and relying on it. So in this case, if you want to rely more on technologies, we have to build such a trust system where we can ensure privacy, can ensure security, ownership, and transparency of that ecosystem. So in short, it's digital of trust, security, transparency, decentralized and democratization of governance, temper resistantness. I'll talk more about this in our masterclass on how blockchains are temper resistant and not immutable. Programmability. We didn't have a lot of flexibility of programming financial assets previously. With blockchain recently, we started doing a lot of that, where we started doing more and more applications where, like such as smart contracts, DeFi applications, flash loans, and many other things where you actually can automate a lot of your financial processes and easier data access for participating parties. In this case, all the parties that should have those information, they have easily available to them, and they can be one of the auditors or validators of the ecosystem. So now cryptocurrencies for the last 11 years is being validated by the community. The community is making sure there's nobody hacking it or nobody is gaining on the system. Whenever there is, somebody will be reporting it, and putting out that, oh, somebody just hacked a system or somebody just tried to tamper with the blockchain, and all of the data is available on a public network for the case of Bitcoin. And you have to see, since blockchain are designed modularly, because there's just set of piece of programming and codes, you can decide what are the values and what are systems that you want to maintain for your application. Let's say if you're building a business centric supply chain application, let's say, you don't have to put all those values of Bitcoin into your supply chain application. You can decide, maybe I need transparency between my members. I don't need to show to the whole world what are the trades that are happening on my chain. I just need, for let's say, for the case of this rubber trade, or the parties between this rubber trade able to see that information. You don't have to create APIs and servers and all that stuff. You just have you have a blockchain where all three of you all run and jointly contribute the resources, and then you can share the data easily as well, and you can control what are the data they can add in and what are the data you can add in, and further customize it according to your need. So it's just piece of codes that you actually can pick up and customize further on your needs. But just to give an introduction to the people who have never heard about Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies or blockchain before, that's the reason we start with Bitcoin, because that's where it was founded from, and that's what some of the values that where it came out from, right? So if you take the Bitcoin tail as an example, it has been it is having 99.98% uptime for the last 10 years. Among the best applications doesn't have that much of uptimes as well. Some of them are only 80% uptime, some of them are 85, some of them 90, but Bitcoin has 99.98% uptime in the last 10 years. And there are more than 43 million users worldwide, and it's actually growing. During MCO, the whole ecosystem grew quite much faster. I think it'll be might be hitting 50 million right now, but I'm waiting for somebody to come up with a report about it. Then it's running in the in an open and hostile environment for the last 11 years, almost 11 years now, and every government's tried to shut it down, hackers tried to shut it down, and a lot of other parties that were such as finance and banks was trying to resist it, but it's still there. And it's been proven resilient against DDoS attacks, Sybil attacks, SQL injections, and many other sort of security threats that, like out there, that actually are which are actually affecting a lot of businesses that are operating. But Bitcoin did that without having a firewall, without actually customizing your network. They just have random computers, people with like simple computers plugging into Bitcoin network, and basically just using the protocol. And the protocol self defended itself from all these sort of attacks. So the protocol was good enough where it didn't need any external applications to support or defend it. So that's the reason it has been quite secure, because the bigger the network grow, the more secure it gets. and it has a simple recovery and verification system. In this case, every time like a node goes down, it can easily check what is the most adopted blockchain version, and then just download it and just recover itself and start doing transactions again. That's the reason it's having 99.98% uptime all the time. Data, it's being temper resistant. So in this case, it's very hard to change any Bitcoin data. It spends, you can spend up, let's say if you want to go up 5 years back and change your Bitcoin value so you can become a millionaire right now, you'll be spending millions of dollars to change that data, because you'll be spending it in electricity amount, because you have to fight against the whole network with more electricity than what than the whole network is actually using right now, and spend all that money just to change a single uh, data variable. Standardized collaboration. So since the protocol is standardized, so every network that comes in, it can be running from a IoT device, can be running on a PC, it can be running on an ASIC, it can be run in multiple other things. And the Bitcoin node, it's still easy to collaborate with. Reduce the cost of doing finance. So now it's if you compare with a lot of other cryptocurrencies today that are in market, there some of them can do much cheaper because they're much newer. But if you compare it with traditional finance, it's much cheaper to do finance. Let's say remittance, payments, loans, and all that stuff on Bitcoin actually. It comes to became a mechanism of digital trust, and it also became a mechanical mechanism of digital trust. So, going into the questions that we wanted to answer today in this webinar, since I'm already running out of time, so I'm just going to go quickly on this. So, what are the opportunities in the blockchain industry? Is what I wanted to answer in the today's webinar. And previously, yeah, I think it's quite hard to get into them without understanding briefly what is blockchain and where is the whole concept going towards. So, coming in, I feel there's going to be a huge amount of disruption, and the way we've been doing finance and insurance, healthcare, governance, compliance, supply chains, legal services, property market, intellectual properties, and resource management. And in just few years, I think there's going to be a lot of disruptions, and there's a possibility some of these industries might have a complete reshape, and some of them might just poof vanish, right? But is it exactly? It's just that I feel that there's going to be new business models. I'm not saying that they're just going to go vanish completely, just like the Thanos snap indicated earlier. I feel that there's going to be new business models, because today I can run a cryptocurrency without an auditor, without a lot of security requirements. I can do the payment services much cheaper. And in this case, all the flaws and flaws of auditors and flaws of bankers, security people that are sitting down and trying to secure financial services today, they will basically need to rethink or reskill themselves into different segments. Because if tomorrow a fintech startup comes out or a fintech bank comes out and do all these activities at a fraction of cost and able to capture a sizable market size, most of the big banks will feel the pressure, will feel the pinch, because they are running, let's say for one loan, they have like 3 to 5 people working at the back, where most of these fintech companies just have an application where you can apply a loan from. So the cost of running that is just server costs, right? But when it goes on a blockchain system, it actually reduces way more cost than just a fintech company. It will be much cheaper to run a fintech application on blockchain than running a Alipay, for example. So it's cheaper to run a crypto app than Alipay at the moment, because it's being self-governed, and a lot of times it's also being governed by community. So even the person running the software or running that project do not pay for it. It's the community who's actually paying for it, and they have an incentive system to do it. That's one of the reasons for the last since 2017 there has been a big growth in the ecosystem. There has been a lot of there was a huge bubble that was growing in. Everybody was issuing cryptocurrency wallets, cryptocurrency payment, cryptocurrency coins, and every single one, a lot of people was rushing in to also buy those coins to participate in their network, and the whole ecosystem kind of growth after that. So today, in the decentralized economy, if we look into, I'll try to briefly put it as a decentralized economy. DeFi is one of the biggest section. There's actually many other sections in the decentralized economy, but DeFi is one of the biggest one right now, where you can see payment, banking, insurance, credit. Credit providers is currently growing really big, especially providing credit for trades, trading markets, lending, gambling, trade finance. Trade finance is also picking up really fast. A lot of major companies are coming in to basically do trade finance on blockchain. There are few Malaysian banks as well who are involved, and basically doing some sort of POCs and testings. Then even regionally, there's a lot of financial institutes that are getting involved to lower down trade finance costs, asset and risk management, financial analysis. One of the problems with financial analysis is transparency, right? You don't have the data available to understand what is the real economical impact of COVID. Let's say now you need to go in and get from the government. Government have to really pressure a lot of the banks, the financial systems, the businesses to identify and notify them what are the business impacts. And you are still not certain, is it a true information, right? Sometimes some people might just fake their figures, but then you have to do compliance and auditing of the numbers. Are they true, right? And often we don't do it. We just take it as a kind of a guide to tell what is the possible impact, but we usually put up a plus minus percentage on it. That's it. But if let's say we have more transparency on the data that is available to us, we know this many trades happen and this many trades fail because of COVID, we can do better financial analysis and better financial decisions, better business management. So in this case, this is where you can really see the value of a blockchain system powering our local economy. Scoring and compliance. This has been one of the big areas that has been there's a lot of fraud for the last few years. We've been hearing since 2008 where there was a lot of scoring companies or rating companies in America, as they say, rating companies of assets, where they were giving uh, false ratings on stocks or bonds and everything. Let's say even it's a garbage asset, a lot of people were just rating it as double A or a triple A asset that can be traded on the markets. So in this case, a lot of fraud happened in that space as well. And in this case, it was quite difficult for them as well to basically track back were they actually good assets, because they didn't have transparency on what were the underlying assets and what were the underlying performance of the underlying assets as well. Security, RegTech, InsurTech, FinTech, KYC services, all of this can be simplified. Recently, government Bank Negara just came up with a statement that they want to simplify onboarding of bank users and for opening up bank accounts by using KYC services, digital KYC services. Uh, but what if we had digital IDs right now, right? If Malaysia would have think one step ahead and we actually develop digital IDs, maybe based on blockchain where everybody has control on the data that they are using, but but in this case they don't need to go through another eKYC, because right now if I had a digital ID, I can just go and click on every single fintech wallet and say that I want to register an account, and just click one button and I'm already registered. But if I since I don't have that, I have to go through eKYC process in every single bank, every single fintech application, every single place where I have to verify my identity. I have to go in and put out my IC, give them my information, give them my data, then get it verified, and then use that fintech application. And then I'm still displacing a lot of my information, which becomes a privacy risk to me, because now multiple fintech companies and exchanges are actually holding my data. What if they're misusing my data, or what if they get hacked? Because my information is already on the dark net, because last DG got hacked. I started to get a lot of prank calls, and so yeah, a lot of scam calls telling that I have loans here that I need to do repayments and stuff like that, because my data is already up on the net for people to use. And basically, and a lot of times it sounds very convincing when they have my actual data, right? And not getting too deep into it, let's just go into the other sectors. There's also other industries are really booming, especially the gaming and esports industry. Esports, there's multiple projects. There are teams, esport teams that are being funded via crypto. There are uh, people funding the teams according with cryptocurrencies. They have digital collectibles for people who are supporting those esport games. There are games that are being built on decentralized network. So if you remember the movie Ready Player One, a lot of the concepts that you see in that movie are possible because if we use blockchain. where even the owners or the developers of the games could not take over the game because it was built on a shared network. If you watch that movie, similarly like that, there's a lot of new platforms like Decentraland, there's Decentra, and few other projects that are coming up. They're building decentralized games where all the assets that you're building up on the game, or your all the credits that you're earning in the game are yours. You have complete ownership on them. And tomorrow, let's say when the game company shut down, there's going to be multiple other integrations that are already available that you can move from your assets from one game to another game. It's a whole new future of gaming that is being developed, enabled by decentralized technology. Entertainment also is it's also creating. It's also booming right now. People are creating applications where you can pay directly to the artist instead of going through platforms, and also pay by consumption. Basically, if you're hearing the song for 10 minutes, maybe you just want to, sorry, for 2 minutes, then you only want to pay for those 2 minutes. Let's say if you're watching the movie for 15 minutes, then you want to only pay for this 15 minutes of the movie. So in this case, you pay by how much you consume instead of subscribing to so many different digital platforms and never watching them. Data market, digital collectible, healthcare, prop tech, law tech, decentralized security, manufacturing tech, every single thing that like we think about that requires trust, there is blockchain coming in, and in some places innovating it, in some place outright disrupting it, because they will come in. If you want blockchain to really bring value in those ecosystem, the whole way of doing those technology system have to change. And in certain places, they're just a value add service where they just come in. Let's say in gaming, if you do it on Decentraland, oh, you can actually have a more shared ecosystem, more people will support it, so people can just start playing new games, or the game can have a new update, let's say. But in certain areas, like let's say talk about law tech, there's going to be a lot of disruption. Prop tech, there's going to be a lot of disruptions as well. There's a lot of compliance disruption that will happen. So so there's some of the industries that are coming in. So what's happening in Malaysia since March? There has been a new regulation on IO talk. There has been there's a new talk that has started by SE, basically to come up with the guidelines. There's Luno did a new trading pair. TM said that they would like to eliminate passwords by adopting blockchain. Binance said that they will support Malaysian ringgit. Then there was a talk about adopting palm oil, blockchain in palm oil for traceability surveys. Binance said they will release their debit card here in Malaysia. So a lot of positive news started since March. And if we go into April and May, then there's actually a lot of other stories. I just didn't include them in because they were not related to this class today. But they're about crypto class and crypto stuff that's happening in Malaysia as well. There's new exchanges. There's new exchanges that already start operating in Malaysia. There's some partnership of those exchanges that the last few months we've been hearing. There's exchanges that went through new security updates. Then I think the most recent one and interesting one will be by the PN government, that they said that they will be doing a joint committee on doing blockchain together. This was a release in June. Then Luno just listed 22 hours ago. They said that they'll be listing Litecoin from Tuesday. And then today, another news was released by SE saying that Sharia Advisory Council permits the trade of digital assets, told by the chairman. So every day there's new news on cryptocurrencies, on blockchain. There's new adoptions. There's new company forming in. There's new investments happening. There's also a few weeks back there was actually a takeover of a digital ID company by Green Packet, and many new interesting stuff happening in the space. So you will be keep hearing a lot of this stuff happening in the background, because you'll be wondering like, where is cryptocurrencies, where's blockchain, what's happening? It's actually, there's new things happening every day. And I think the next few months we'll be hearing some more exciting news, because there's going to be more blockchain activities happening in Malaysia. But once, I don't want to jump the gun and share that information now. And once it's available, I think maybe in the next masterclass I will actually share it. So I think I briefly explained this earlier. I would not go in, but this was supposed to be a more detailed, like example. But I'll share the slides since we're running out of time. I would not want to jump into it. So implementation challenges, right, of blockchain. One of the problems that we have of implementing blockchain is one of them is interoperability. We have invested in a lot of old systems and systems from years, and a lot of them are many different versions of those systems. Some are built on old technology, some are built on Java, some are built on JavaScript, or some are built on C. In this case, a lot of the programs and codes were developed for be self-sufficient, and like sufficient to do their operations, but not to integrate with something else. So that's the reason a lot of times when we talk about integration, a lot of these technologies are very outdated, where we don't have, either we can't find the skills or we can't find people who understand those codes, and that becomes a challenge for integration. So a lot often people tell me why a lot of startups are boarding onto blockchain, but not a lot of legacy companies or old companies that are actually boarding on them, because they have a lot of legacy data and networks as well that are already up there. So for them to bring up and adopt blockchain, they have to first think of how they're gonna maintain with the legacy and how important of bringing the legacy. Because in certain areas, the legacy is not very important. They just have to move their user account. Let's say we talk about gaming, right? You just update the new thing. You don't really care about the old one because nobody really going to be playing the earlier version. They just need the new version, and people start playing the new version. And in this case, like once the version is like more than 2 or 3 times, 2 or 3 versions old, nobody plays that game, the old game anymore. The latest version is the one everybody's playing now, so they can cut the support for that, so they do not have a lot of interoperability and legacy network challenges. But when we talk about other ecosystem, when we talk about trading systems, we talk about financial systems, they actually have a lot of legacy data, accounts that were created 20, 30 years ago, who have some money and their database is there. How can we digitize them? How can we actually take those data and integrate them with the new blockchain network? That has been one of the challenges, core challenges.